Okay. Hello, everyone. As usual, we are going to start our weekly Dhamma discussion. So today we will be discussing uh, a sutta named Janussoni Sutta. Janussoni is a Brahmin. He was a Brahmin at the time of the Buddha, and he came to the Buddha and expressed his opinion. So let's see what the Buddha teaches in that in this sutta. So I'm using Bhikkhu Sujato's translation from suttacentral.net. So they have kind of changed the name of the sutta. They have used the word Abhaya Sutta, or fearless. Abhaya means fearless. But in the Pali Canon, the the sutta was named as Janussoni Sutta because the name of the Brahmin who came to the Buddha was Janussoni. So so at that time, this Brahmin named Janussoni, he went up to the Buddha and exchanged greetings with him. And there was a small talk. So after the small talk, he sat down to one side and he said this to the Buddha. He said, Master Gautama, this is my doctrine and view. All those liable to death are frightened and terrified of death. So his view is everybody who is liable to death are afraid of it. So he didn't believe that there are people who are not afraid of death. So the Buddha, the Buddha's opinion was different. So the Buddha said, some of those liable to death are frightened and terrified of death, but some of those liable to death are not frightened and terrified of death. So he said there are people who are afraid of death, and there are people who are not afraid of death. And here the Buddha explained these four types of people who are not afraid of death. So first he explained those who are frightened of death. So usually almost all the people in the world, when they face death, that's a terrible experience, and almost everybody becomes afraid. So they become frightened. So the Buddha said these four types of people are afraid of death. So the Buddha said it is someone who isn't free of greed, desire, fondness, thirst, passion, and craving for sensual pleasures. So if somebody is attached to sensual pleasures, they become afraid of death. So sensual pleasures are the pleasures we experience through our eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body, the five senses. So we see forms, we hear sounds, we feel taste, odors or smells, and we feel touch. So there are pleasurable experiences in this world. So people are attached to these pleasurable sensations. So there are forms in the world which are beautiful and which people get attached to. So when somebody looks at these beautiful forms, they get attached to these forms because there is a pleasurable sensation when they see these forms. So that's why they get attached to. That's why they get attached to these forms. So so these are called sensual pleasures, pleasurable things that they see, things they hear, things they smell, things they taste, and things they touch. So when there is craving for these sensual pleasures, the Buddha said, when they fall seriously ill, they think the sensual pleasures that I love so much will leave me and I will leave them. So there are these sensual pleasures in the world that we are attached to. When we fall seriously ill, when we face death, like when we are at our deathbed, we will get this feeling. So there are these sensual pleasures that I'm fond of, that I'm attached to. Now, now I am leaving these sensual pleasures, and these sensual pleasures are leaving me. So this is a common problem for almost all the people in this world. So when they face death, they will always think about their loved ones, their families, their children, their partners. So they will think, oh, these I will leave. I am leaving these people, and these people are leaving me. So because of that attachment, that person has to suffer. He has to go through a lot of suffering. Uh, and the Buddha said, the sorrow and wail and lament, beating their breast and falling into confusion. So they suffer, and they lament, they cry. Sometimes they lose their mind and they start beating their chests to express their pain. So they go through so much pain physically and mentally because of this attachment. So the Buddha said this is the first person who is frightened of death. So he's afraid of death because he's attached to these five sensual pleasures. So he is not free of greed, desire, fondness, thirst, passion, and craving for sensual pleasures. So the Buddha used different words. So let's see what the Pali words the Buddha used. So the Buddha's ekacho kamesu avitarago is he has not removed uh, passion or lust, and avigata chando, he hasn't removed the liking or fondness towards these sensual pleasures. Avigata pemo, pemo means love or passion. Avigata pipaso, pipaso means thirst. So there is a thirst in all of us for these sensual pleasures. So, so the Buddha explained the Dhamma. He explained the Noble Eightfold Path so that a person who practices the Noble Eightfold Path will get rid of this thirst and this attachment, this fondness. Avigata parilahu means parilaha is kind of the inner fire that we have. That fire has to be extinguished. Avigata tanho, tanha means craving. So these people have not they're not free from these this attachment or this defilement they have towards the sensual pleasures. So when they fall seriously ill, they think the sensual pleasures that I love so much will leave me and I will be leaving them. So they have to go through so much pain. So this is the first person who is frightened of death. And the next person the Buddha explained is it is somebody who isn't free of greed, desire, fondness, thirst, passion, and craving for the body. So many of us, or almost all of us, are attached to our body. So that's why people they take a lot of nutrients uh, to make them appear beautiful in society. They want pe- uh, them to be attractive. So they use different types of clothes and cosmetics uh, to become attractive. So there is a craving for the body. So this is the second person. The Buddha said, "Idekacho kai avitarago hoti." There are some who have not removed lust towards the body. Kaya means body. Avigata chando. Chanda means liking or fondness. Pema means love. Pipasa means thirst. Parilaha means inner fire. Tanha means craving. So the there are people who have not removed this these defilements towards the body. So when they fall ill, they will think this body that I love so much will leave me. So I will have to leave this body. So sometimes he or she uh, will be in the hospital, and maybe they have to go through a surgery. So they'll be so afraid because of this attachment to the body. And the Buddha said, "This they will think this body that I love so much will leave me, and I will leave it." So they will sorrow, wail, and lament, beating their breast and falling into confusion. So they will have to go through so much suffering because of this attachment. So the Buddha said, "This is the second person who is afraid of death." This too is somebody who is frightened of death. And the next one, uh, the, the Buddha pointed out is it is somebody who hasn't done good and skillful things that keep them safe, but has done bad things, violence, and sin. So there are people who have done misconduct with their body, speech, and mind, and they have not done anything good. They haven't done wholesome deeds. So such a person who has done evil actions, when they face death, they will reflect on all the things that they did, and they will suffer mentally. So the Buddha said, when they fall seriously ill, they will think, well, I haven't done good and wholesome things that keep me safe, and I have done bad things, violence and sin. When I depart, I will go to the place where people who have done such things go. So he'll be so afraid that, thinking that, okay, I have done all these bad things, violent actions, and I have done like I have hurt many people, and I have not done any wholesome good deeds. So all these bad actions will take me to a bad destination. So even in other religions, they believe in a place after death. So those who like there are people who believe in God. So even in those religions, they they believe that those who do good actions will be taken to heaven. So the God will take them to heaven, and those who have done bad actions will have to go to hell because the God will send them to hell. So there are a lot of people who believe in life after death. So they will those who have done unwholesome deeds will think, when I depart, I will go to this place where people who have done such things go. So because I have also done all these unwholesome things, and I will also have to go to this bad world, hell, or now will have to suffer. So because of this, uh, because they have done unwholesome deeds, they will have to suffer and be afraid of death. So the Buddha said they sorrow, wail, and lament, beating their breasts and falling into confusion. This too is someone who is frightened of death. So this is the third person who is afraid of death. Uh, and the fourth person the Buddha explains in this sutta is it is someone who is doubtful, uncertain, and undecided about the true teaching. Idekacho khankati hoti vichikichi anithangato sadhammi. That means they are not certain of the Dhamma. So those who are certain of the Dhamma that was taught by the Buddha, they know that those who have done good deeds will go to heaven, and those who have done unwholesome deeds will go to a bad destination. So if when they reflect on the Dhamma, when they reflect on all the actions that they have done throughout their lives, they will understand that okay, there is nothing for me to be afraid of. This is the nature of all the sentient beings. So we all will have to face death, and that is inevitable. So uh, so they will not be afraid of death. Instead, they will reflect on all the good things that they did, and the real nature of the world, the impermanent nature. Uh, so they will not be afraid. But those who are doubtful, so even those who have not heard of the Buddha's words, they when they face death, they will be doubtful of what will happen to them after death. So because of that state of mind, that because of that doubt, they will have to suffer because they are uncertain, they are doubtful, they don't know what will happen. So they will be so confused when they face death. So because of that confusion, because of that doubt and uncertainty, they will have to go through so much suffering. So the Buddha said, when they fall seriously ill, they will think, I am doubtful, uncertain, and undecided about the true teaching. So, so I don't know what will happen to me when I die. I don't know what will happen to me in my next life. So they will have to go through so much suffering because of that. So the Buddha said, they sorrow and wail and lament, beating their breast and falling into confusion. This too is someone who is frightened of death. So these are the four people who are afraid of death. So the Brahmin Janussoni's view was all those who are liable to death are afraid of it. All those liable to death are frightened and terrified of death. That was his view. The Buddha said that there are certain types of people who are afraid of death, and there are certain types of people who are not afraid of death. So, uh, so the Buddha explained these four people who are afraid of death: those who are attached, those who have not given up the attachment towards the sensual pleasures, and those who have not given up the attachment to their body, and those who have not done wholesome deeds, and those who have done unwholesome deeds throughout their lives, and those who are doubtful, those who are not certain of the true teaching or the Dhamma. Because of that doubt, because of that uncertainty, they will have to suffer. Uh, and the Buddhists explained, so he said, these are the four people liable to death who are frightened of death and terrified of death. And there are these people who are not afraid of death. And then Buddha explained who they are. So the first person is somebody who is rid of greed, desire, fondness, thirst, passion, and craving for sensual pleasures. So if somebody removes the craving or the attachment towards sensual pleasures, they will not be afraid of death because they know that they don't have any attachment towards the sensual pleasures, and when they face death, it's not so much of a suffering for them because they don't have any attachment towards these sensual pleasures, and they know that all these things are impermanent. So the Buddha said, when they fall seriously ill, they do not think the sensual pleasures that I love so much will leave me and I will leave them. So this thought will not be there in their minds, unlike the other person. So they do not sorrow, wail, and lament, beating their breast and falling into confusion. So they will not go through this suffering as the other person who is attached to sensual pleasures, because they have given up the sensual pleasures and they don't have any attachment towards these sensual pleasures. So, according to the Buddhist teachings, a person who has become a non-returner will he is the person who has completely uh, uh, removed craving towards sensual pleasures, because the Buddha said that there are these three types of craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, and craving for non-existence. So a non-returner or an anagami person, they have removed the first form of craving, the craving for sensual pleasures, but they have craving for existence and craving for non-existence. So a person who has completely removed craving for sensual pleasures is a non-returner. He will not return to the human world. Uh, so such a person will not be afraid of death. And there are other people who are uh, like they have practiced meditation for a long time, and they haven't achieved any stage of enlightenment, but they have practiced meditation for too long, and they have kind of suppressed this attachment towards sensual pleasure. So even such people will not be afraid of death because they don't have so much attachment to the sensual pleasures. So they have given up sensual pleasures and practice meditation for a long time. So even though they have not achieved these stages of enlightenment, since they don't have much attachment to these sensual pleasures, they will not be afraid of death. So those who are uh, those who do not have greed, desire, fondness, thirst, passion, and craving for sensual pleasures will not be afraid of death. So these words are important because like so the Buddha used kame suvitarago, those who do not have desire towards sensual pleasures. Vigata chando, chanda means liking. Prema means love or fondness. Vigata pemo. Vigata pipaso, pipaso means thirst. And parilaha means the inner fire. Vigata tanho, tanha means craving. So, like if you take these two words, pipasa and parilaha, thirst and fire, that means like it represents strong emotions towards sensual pleasures. Like they have strong attachments, and because of these strong attachments, they have the thirst, and they have the inner fire to associate with these sensual pleasures. They need to be with these sensual pleasures. So the Buddha explained a gradual path to reach enlightenment and to remove defilements. So we cannot remove craving completely at once, but we have to go through this practice or this path and develop wholesome qualities and suppress unwholesome states, and eventually remove or abandon these unwholesome states and achieve enlightenment. So the purification of our minds should be achieved gradually. So those who have suppressed this thirst and uh, the inner fire are somewhat free from this suffering. So this suffering that most people have to face at death should be sh- should be abandoned gradually. So that it is also explained in these words. So the Buddha said, someone who is rid of greed, desire, fondness, thirst, passion, and craving for sensual pleasures, when they fall seriously ill, they do not think the sensual pleasures that I love so much will leave me, and I will leave them. So this thought will not appear in their minds. So they don't sorrow and wail and lament, beating their breast and falling into confusion. So this is someone who is not frightened of death. And the second person is, it is somebody who is rid of greed, desire, fondness, thirst, passion, and craving for the body. So, so there are meditations in the Buddhist teachings to remove the desire towards our body. So in Kaya Anupasana, so the Buddha said that mindfulness should be developed in these four ways. That is mindfulness towards the body, mindfulness towards the mind, mindfulness towards feelings, and mindfulness towards mental phenomena. So these four are called Satara Satipatthana, the four foundations of mindfulness: Kaya Anupassana, Vedana Anupassana, Chitta Anupassana, and Dhamma Anupassana. So Kaya Anupassana is to be mindfulness, to be mindful of our body. So there are certain meditations uh, that a practitioner should develop. So in those meditations, desire towards the body will be removed gradually. So there is this meditation called Asubha Bhavana. Asubha means impurity. So the way to do this meditation is to see this body as something impure. So the body is not pure. So there are a lot of impurities in the body. So the hair, the skin, the flesh, the bones, and all these inner organs, the blood, and all the other things that they're in the body, they're not pure. They're not beautiful. So when we reflect the impure nature of our body, the desire towards the body will be gradually removed. So the Buddha said, someone who is rid of greed, desire, fondness, thirst, passion, and craving for the body will not be afraid of death. So when they fall seriously ill, they will not think, this body that I love so much will leave me and I will leave it. So so they will understand that this body is impermanent, and when we leave this body, when we die, this body will decompose and will start to rot, and he such a person will not have greed or attachment towards the body, and when they face death, they will not be afraid of death. So So they will not think this body that I love so much will leave me and I will leave it. This thought will not be there in their mind, so they will not suffer. So the Buddha said they don't sorrow and wail and lament, beating their breast and falling into confusion. This too is someone who is not frightened of death. So those who are free from attachment towards their body will not be afraid of death. The next person is someone who hasn't done bad things, violence, and sin, but has done good and skillful deeds that keep them safe. So, so the Buddha advised his disciples in many ways that they should abandon unwholesome deeds, they should abandon misconduct, and cultivate wholesome deeds and collect merit. So that means good karma. So those who are virtuous and those who are generous and those who help others and those who meditate, try to purify their minds, they gain, they cultivate meritorious actions and wholesome actions. So and they have abandoned doing unwholesome deeds. So such a person, they have not done bad things, violence and sin, but they have done good and wholesome deeds. So when they fall seriously ill, they will think, well, I have not done bad things, violence and sin, and I have done good and skillful deeds that keep me safe. When I depart, I will go to the place where people who have done such things go. So I will be born in heaven because I have not done unwholesome deeds. I have done wholesome deeds. I have abandoned misconduct, and I have gained so much good karma, good merit, and as a result of those good actions, I'll be born in heaven. So they will not be afraid of death. So the Buddha said, they don't sorrow and wail and lament, beating their breast and falling into confusion. This too is someone who is not frightened. For those who are done wholesome actions will not be afraid of death. The fourth person is someone who is not doubtful, uncertain, or undecided about the true teaching. So, if someone has realized the teaching, the Buddha's teaching, the Dhamma, they will know that they will know the real nature of our lives, and they will know what will happen to them in their after death, and they have understood what is suffering, and they are not afraid of it. So those who have realized the Dhamma, they since they are not doubtful, they are not uncertain, they are not undecided about the Dhamma, and they will know exactly what will happen to them in their uh, in this existence. So such people, when they fall seriously ill, they will not think, I am. They will think, I am not doubtful. I'm not uncertain. I am not undecided about the true teaching. I have realized the teaching. I know the Dhamma. So, so such people will not be afraid of death, and they will not be sad. They will not wail and lament, beating their breast and falling into confusion. So these people who have realized the Dhamma will not be afraid of death. So the Buddha said this is someone who is not frightened of death. So these are the four people liable to death. So they are liable to death. The person who has given up sensual pleasures is liable to death. He will also die. The person who has given up the attachment towards the body will also die. Those who have done good deeds, those who have abandoned unwholesome deeds throughout their lives will also die. And those who have realized the Dhamma will also die. But they will not be afraid of death. So the Buddha said these four people liable to death, these are the four people liable to death who are not frightened and terrified of death. And then Janussoni, the Brahmin, he understood the Buddha's words, and he said, "Excellent, Master Gautama, excellent." And he abandoned his view. So first he had this view that all those liable to death are frightened and terrified of death. This was his view, but he abandoned this, and he became a disciple of the Buddha. He said, "From this day forth, may the worthy Gautama remember me as a lay follower who has gone for refuge for life." So he took refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha after this discussion. So what we have to understand uh, from this sutta is that death is inevitable. So we all have to face death. When we face death, we have to be one of these four types of people. Otherwise, we will have to suffer when we die because of all the attachments. So so that's why we have to practice Dhamma, and more importantly, to do wholesome deeds and to abandon unwholesome deeds. So the third person described in this sutta, they are who hasn't done bad things, violence and sin, but has done good and wholesome deeds that keep them safe. So if we can become this person, I think it is comparatively easy when we compare these four people who are not afraid of death. The becoming the third person is kind of practical, because removing craving for sensual pleasures and removing craving for the body is not easy. They are not. That is not easy. And realizing the Dhamma and removing doubt completely is also not easy. But doing wholesome deeds and abandoning unwholesome deeds and living a virtuous life is comparatively uh, practical. So if we can become the third person, as explained in the sutta, then we will get a chance to remove sensual pleasures, the attachment to sensual pleasures and the attachment for our body, and to realize the Dhamma and remove doubt. So, so in that way, when we face death, we will not be afraid of death. So, one disadvantage of being afraid of death is that we will not be able to focus when we face death if you are afraid of it. So, so in many suttas and even in Abhidhamma, the Buddha explained that the 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 state of mind we have when we face death affects our next life. So if we are kind of confused when we face death, if we cannot focus uh, in the Dhamma when we face death, maybe there will be a chance for us to be born in a bad destination. So when we face death, it is important to to have focus and mindfulness. So in order to have mindfulness when we face death, we should not be afraid of death. So that means we have to be one of these four people, and that will help us to have focus and have mindfulness in our deathbed, and uh, and we will not have to suffer as those who are attached to sensual pleasures, and those who are attached to the body, and those who have done misconduct, and those who are not, those who have not realized the Dhamma. So we will be able to face death with mindfulness, without being afraid, uh, without being frightened of death, and that will help us to be born in a good place in our next life, and even we will get a chance to achieve enlightenment. in the future. So this is what we have to understand from this sutta. Uh, so this is relatively a small sutta from Anguttara Nikaya. So in Anguttara Nikaya, uh, in all the suttas, they are kind of, we call them numerical discourses, because in all the suttas, the Buddha explained uh, uh, a number of things. So in this sutta, the Buddha explains four people, and there are other suttas that the Buddha explains five things or five people, or like six topics or seven topics, so like that. So we call them numerical discourses. So in this sutta, the Buddha explained four people who are afraid of death and four people who are not afraid of death. Okay, so if you want to share your ideas about this sutta, you can comment under this video. So this will be available on YouTube. The recording will be available on YouTube. So you can comment, and if you have any questions, you can ask your questions as a comment. So I will try to discuss these things in future sessions. So uh, that's all I wanted to discuss today. So this is a small sutta from Anguttara Nikaya. So we will be discussing another sutta next week. So until we meet again, I would like to wish you all the best, and may all of you be well and happy. And we'll meet next week. Until then, take care.